our Arapahoe County Public Works and Development Department Transportation Manager, Jim Kotzer. We're here to talk tonight about the Transportation Master Plan. If you've lived in Arapahoe County for any amount of time, you probably are quite familiar with all the growth we've had in recent years, and we know that this growth is projected to continue for the next decade or two at least. And with that in mind, for about a little over a year now, our Public Works and Development Department has been working on this Transportation Master Plan, which is meant to project out some projects and plans that we have between now and about 2040. So it looks out quite a bit ahead of where we are today. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about how this is going to work. This is a telephone and video town hall. So if you're joining us on the phone and you want to ask a question of either of our hosts, you can dial *3 and that'll put you through to an operator. And if you're joining us online, you can type any question you have into the comments box and we will get to that as they come through. The other thing is, if you're on the phone and want to follow along to the slideshow we have, you can do that by going onto our Facebook page, the county Facebook page, or you can go to arapahoegov.com/town hall and follow it there. The other thing to know is that we will be recording this, and the recording will be available within about 24 hours. And so you could go back and watch the slides later if there was something you didn't catch or anything like that. So with that, I will hand it over to Commissioner Jeff Baker.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Arapahoe County is one of the fastest growing counties in Colorado, and the pandemic did nothing to slow that momentum. Those of us who have been here for a while know that this is a great place to live, to raise a family, or to start and run a business. One byproduct of this is that more and more people want to move here, especially Colorado, but Arapahoe County in general too. This growth places increasing demands on our transportation infrastructure in terms of the volume of everyday traffic and the maintenance necessary to keep things running as smoothly as possible, literally smoothly as possible. For the last few years, the Arapahoe County Public Works and Development Department has worked closely with the Board of County Commissioners and other departments to create a transportation master plan that envisions how our transportation needs and challenges will develop between now and, as Luke said, around 2040. This project has involved extensive research, a lot of study sessions, a lot of consulting with our community partners and other stakeholders, and soliciting public feedback from folks like you. Some of you on the line tonight probably have completed one of our surveys or attended a transportation-focused event. That's the county calling to tell me that there's a transportation town hall meeting tonight. Actually, that's probably who that is. It's Luke giving me a call on my home phone. Public Works and Development has gathered all of this information into the master plan that you'll hear more about tonight. Thank you for being here. And with that, I'm going to introduce someone I've had the pleasure of working with for many years, Jim Kotzer, our transportation manager. Jim?
Thank you, Commissioner Baker. It's great to be here tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the 2040 Transportation Master Plan. So the 2040 Transportation Master Plan is an update of the 2035 Master Plan that was completed about 10 years ago. So we update these plans occasionally, but it's great to be here with you tonight and look forward to getting into the presentation. So with that, I think Luke's going to start the presentation and we can start moving forward. So thank you, Luke. So one thing that's unique with this transportation master plan is that we focused on a county-wide master plan instead of focusing on just those areas that we serve in the unincorporated parts of the county. This is focusing on the county as a whole. So in order to do that, we had to get a lot of cooperation and have a lot of conversations with those throughout the county. The Board of County Commissioners funded this project. And Public Works and Development is working at carrying out the plan, and we're almost complete. So as I mentioned, those other people involved, we involved Arapahoe County Transportation Forum, which is a part of the regional metropolitan organization. And that included every jurisdiction within the county except for one. And on that transportation forum, we got input and we reached out to this group of professionals and got input to the transportation master plan. Dr. Cog was also worked with on this, and we also included public stakeholders. So we'll get into that here in a minute on how we engage the public and the stakeholders. So the reason why we are doing the transportation master plan, Luke mentioned it, Commissioner Baker mentioned it, but our population is going up in the county. People really want to come live and work and play in Arapahoe County in Colorado, and they make their way to the homes and then they make their way to the roads. So we need a plan for that development. And the graph here on the upper right is a indication or a forecast of what the population is going to do in the metro area counties. And you can see Arapahoe County is up to 1 million people projected in 2050. So that's a lot of people. And that's an increase from 2010 of 400,000 people, almost doubling. So we're going to plan for those people to come and travel on our roadways. So how we do this is we look at our existing transportation network. And also not just the network transportation, but also those land uses. So where are people going to build? Where are they going to live, work? And then, of course, with that, how are they going to get around? So we need to understand that. And with that understanding, we'll be able to forecast the future demand. So if they build here, if they're going to travel here, so here's the future demand on the transportation system. We also reached out, as I mentioned, to these other people in the county, and we got a compilation of the community's values. We also wanted to understand what their goals are for the transportation system, develop strategies with that information, and then towards the end there, we did a financial analysis because we know that these improvements take money. So the project started in April 2020. And that was just after the COVID lockdown happened. And we will wrap up here this coming month. So November 16th, we plan on presenting to the board. Next slide, please. So with the transportation master plan, we developed goals. But before I talk about the 4 goals, I wanted to point to the picture on the right part of your screen. And that is I-25 and Arapahoe Road. So this project was identified in previous transportation master plans. And I show this picture to let you know that these plans don't just sit on the shelf, but we use them. And we put into service great projects like this one, this project's benefiting many, many people every day and serves and meets people's transportation needs. So the 4 goals of the transportation master plan, in no particular order, I wanted to mention the first one was promote an efficient and balanced transportation system. The second one was promote alternative transportation solutions. The third was coordinate land use and transportation. And the fourth is continue a strategic management and tracking approach to the county's transportation system. So with each of these 4 goals, we have policies and strategies that support each of these goals so we can accomplish them. So, for instance, one of them that I wanted to mention was provide continuity or connectivity in north, south, and east-west connections in the eastern part of the county. Well, in order to do that, we need to set aside right-of-way for those projects so that when we come to build those north, south, east, west roads, we don't have to purchase right-of-way. We can set it aside now and provide a corridor of right-of-way to make these improvements. Next slide, please. So this next slide shows and demonstrates how we engage the public. So we engage the public 3 different times. And this is one of, right not the most challenging thing we faced, but it was definitely the earliest challenge we faced. Because when we went to engage the public was working from home. As you guys remember, we all went on lockdown in March and April. And that was a challenge because traditionally we've engaged the public in person. So we made a quick adjustment, and we used one of the tools here on the right, and that's a pinpoint map. And we also used some other various tools that were online, like an online survey, and we did a telephone town hall similar to this type of event. And we reached out to the public. And as I mentioned, reached out to them 3 times. And I think the public outreach and engagement was a huge success. We received over 800 comments in those 3 times. And what we heard from the public, and we tried to ask the same question in the 3 different events, and we're going to ask a very similar one tonight. And what are the transportation priorities that you have? What's most important to you? So the top 2, not a surprise to you. I'm not trying to persuade you in your question in the future, but the first question, or the first concern, was traffic congestion. People were really concerned about the congestion they were experiencing on the county roadways. The second one was traffic safety. So we all like to return home safely. We don't like to get in wrecks. We don't like friends that get into accidents. So this was a high priority for those that we talked to. Other things that were noted was roadway maintenance. People really value quality roads, and then also multimodal improvements. That was also mentioned. And with this, I'm going to turn it back over to Luke, and he has a first polling question for us.
All right, thanks, Jim. As Jim noted, the top responses we've received so far around people's priorities for transportation are safety and congestion. Now that you folks in the eastern part of the county are in a unique spot, literally and figuratively, because you have a lot more unincorporated areas. You obviously have a sparser population, more rural areas, and things like that. However, you're also experiencing probably the highest rate of growth in the county. So we'll be interested to see how you feel about what your priorities are. So I'm going to ask you this polling question. If you're on the phone, you can respond by pressing the following number as it corresponds to your answer. So the question is, what are your top concerns or priorities for the transportation in Arapahoe County, in your neighborhood, in your community, and so forth? Press 1 if your top priority is addressing congestion. Press 2 if it's safety. Press 3 if it's maintaining favorable road conditions. Press 4 if it's adding or enhancing public transportation options. And press 5 if it's adding or enhancing things like bike lanes, pedestrian lanes, carpool lanes, that kind of thing. Once again, I'll go through those again. Press 1 if your top priority or concern is addressing traffic congestion. Press 2 if it's safety. Press 3 if it's maintaining favorable road conditions. Press 4 if it's adding or enhancing public transportation options. And press 5 if it's adding or enhancing things like carpool, bike, or pedestrian lanes. I'll give you the results and ask you a couple more questions later on in the call, but I'll hand it right back to Jim.
All right, thank you, Luke. Look forward to hearing about hearing those responses. Another challenge that we faced in developing the plan and looking at forecast and existing conditions is, since everyone was working from home during last year, we had a hard time getting current traffic data. So we had to look in past studies, and we had another program that we were able to utilize to help us with that. But that proved to be a challenge, but I think the team got over that and got through that well. So one of the things in our study, we identified 44 intersections or road segments that had hotspots along them. So basically pinch points, and those are captured here in this diagram. So you can see Parker Road, just north of Arapahoe Road, parts along Arapahoe Road. So there was 44 hotspots. Out of those 44, only 10 were in unincorporated Arapahoe County. So those are the portions of the road that we control. 34 were in municipalities. So the plan doesn't really get into details on, hey, at every hotspot, you should do this type of improvement. Instead, it's a higher level plan, and we recommend tools like doing a physical improvement or doing signal timing, pavement surface and markings, and warning signs to overcome some of those hotspots. Next slide, please. The plan also made some recommendations, and I wanted to go over a few of those with you tonight. Just some example projects in the central part of the Arapahoe County, and then also in the eastern part. So the central part, when I say that, I mean between I-25 and E-470. So one of the projects that was identified to be completed by year 2030 is a widening of Smoky Hill from E-470 to Buckley. So it's really nice. That road was built so that when the widening occurred, they'd widen to the middle, so that saves on having to purchase right away. But we project that project to cost $14 million, and there's 3 jurisdictions that will be included in that project. So the county for one, Aurora, and Centennial. So some coordination will need to be made, and construction drawings put out, and so on and so forth. But that was one of the projects that was identified. Another project that was identified, and this is more along the multimodal um, genre of projects, and that was the Inverness Drive West on-street bike facility. So that's projected to cost just shy of $6 million, and it's being recommended to be completed by 2030. So the jurisdictions responsible for that project would be the county. And the county has a great working relationship with Inverness. So the Inverness area metro districts will participate in that project. And this is a bike corridor that runs to the east of I-25, which will provide an alternate mode or a corridor for bikes to travel along instead of driving on I-25, which we don't recommend. It's actually illegal. So with that, next slide, please. So in the eastern part of the county, so when I say that east of E-470, I wanted to highlight a couple projects for you. The Widening of Gun Club from Quincy to Aurora Parkway, that is, which is down by Southlands. We're recommending that to be widened by 2030, and we're projecting that to cost about $17 million. That project would include 2 jurisdictions, the county and Aurora, and we have already we're just working on a preliminary design, and we'd like to move into final design here in the next couple of years, and then we'd like to move quickly into construction. So that project is much needed. And another project I wanted to mention to you, and this is of the genre where we're going to need to extend the road, and that's from Powhatan to Harvest. And there's the Sky Ranch development is built there, or is being built, and we've heard a lot of desire expressed from the residents there in Sky Ranch to build this road, and I think it'll provide a lot of benefit. So the cost of that project is $11 million, and we recommend it to be completed by 2030. And once again, the Arapahoe County and Aurora will be part of that project. And what's unique about this project, it's development driven, and the county has a policy that development should pay their way. So we will be asking the developers to build this section of road. Next slide, please. So with that, I would like to go into the next topic. Sorry, there we go. So other improvement recommendations. We recommend, kind of that multimodal approach, or that balanced goal, having a balanced transportation system is where these recommendations come into. So we recommend the county to engage with Reimagine RTD and the Accountability Committee and look at their recommendations. RTD ridership is down, and it's been down since COVID. It's seen a rebound recently, but we encourage the county to and those in the county to engage with RTD and look to expand bus routes with new development, especially as it goes out east. Also to expand along the I-70 corridor, either with RTD or with the CDOT service, which is called bus staying. We've heard some comments that would be nice. Also, expanding or enhancing some bus corridors. So there's a service called Bus Rapid Transit, and those corridors are here on the right in that map, and they're the maroon colored corridors. and we recommend that those be looked into. And also, the last thing with transit would be to establish mobility hubs. So at these locations is where mode shifts happen, either from a car to a bus or from maybe a bus to a light rail. So we encourage the cities to coordinate with each other on creating these mobility hubs. Another two other items. There's 40 bicycle and pedestrian projects recommended in the plan, and those mostly came from the bike and ped plan that was adopted by the commissioners in 2017. And that plan is going to be updated here shortly. But we went ahead and pushed those forward and recommended those. Also, encourage the support of new technologies. Next slide, please. So now the fun part is trying to figure out how to pay for all these recommendations. So the preliminary estimate of the county share for these capital projects is $250 million. And those would include road widening projects, new connections, paving, and the bike ped plan. So that's a lot of money. We did not include any transit services in that because the county doesn't provide transit services. And we also did not include interchanges that need to be built or redone. So a project like I-25 in Bellevue, a preliminary estimate on that project is $110 million to redo that intersection and provide additional capacity. So you can see that type of project would really eat into these other county, smaller county projects. So as we implement the plan, we want to know how well we're doing, how well the plan is doing. So we're going to set up some performance measures. And one of the performance measures is maintaining the level of service. So we want to track along what the community thought was important. So congestion. So percent of congested vehicle hours traveled. So when people are traveling in vehicles, how many hours are spent in a congested state? We would like that to be minimized as much as we can. So we thought that would be a good measure to track. Also, from a traffic safety standpoint, the number of severity of crashes or the number of crashes and the severity of those crashes. We'd like to know that. We think that could be a good measure on the countywide network. Also, payment condition. We heard that road condition and infrastructure condition was really important to the residents of Arapahoe County. So we think this would capture that concern. And then from a mobility standpoint, the amount of bike lane miles in service would be something good to measure. And then also there's other mobility measurements such as access to transit and those types of things. So we're looking at those performance measures as well. Next slide, please. So that wraps up my presentation, and we'd be glad to take any questions that you have. So I'll turn it back over to Luke.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Just to remind everybody, if you're calling in on the phone, you can dial *3, and that'll put you through to an operator who will put you in the queue to ask a question. Or if you're online, you can type a question into the comments box. We do have a couple lined up already. And I want to also give you the results of the first polling question and then ask you another one. The results they mirrored kind of the general consensus in that for 30% of you, traffic congestion still the top priority. I mean, that makes sense. The 28% of you said that safety is your top priority in our transportation efforts. 24% said it's maintaining favorable road conditions. 15% said it's adding or enhancing public transportation options. And 3% said it's adding or enhancing things like bike, pedestrian, and carpool lanes, which makes a certain amount of sense given the rural nature of much of the county. As I mentioned, the unique aspect of District 3 is that PWD probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but PWD, I believe, does more work with the unincorporated parts of the county than anywhere else. And so, and like I said earlier, you're experiencing much of the growth at least the highest rates of growth. So these things will come to affect all of you over time. Before I get into the open question part of it, let me ask you another polling question. This is, again, if you're on the phone, the question is, how likely are you to recommend living in Arapahoe County to someone else? So press 1 if you're very likely to recommend it. Press 2 if you're somewhat likely. Press 3 if you're neutral. Press 4 if you're somewhat unlikely. And press 5 if you're very unlikely. Again, how likely are you to recommend living in Arapahoe County to someone else? 1 is very likely, 2 is somewhat likely, 3 is neutral, 4 is somewhat unlikely, and 5 is very unlikely. I'll give you those results in a few minutes, and I'll ask you one more polling question before we sign off. Again, *3 if you want to ask a question on the phone, and type it into the comments box if you're watching us online. First question I have, winter's coming. We're going to get our first snow any minute now if we haven't already in certain parts of the county. The PWD is the driver, literally and figuratively, behind the plowing operations in the eastern part of the county. Jim, what can you tell us about how the county prioritizes snow plowing and other projects in PWD?
Yeah, that's a great question, Luke. And yes, the snow is coming. I heard the Road and Bridge Division Manager warn people that there's snow probably coming this weekend, and great timing for Halloween. But yeah, the roads in Arapahoe County, we can't afford to plow all of the roads, and we have limited resources. So the public or the department prioritizes basically by use and functional class of the road. So those arterials are going to be plowed, and then those are the primary ones, and then the secondary routes are more of those major collector roads. We have plow routes assigned. The Road and Bridge crew went to training or had training in September, and I know because of the labor shortage, they were down a few truck drivers, so they've been really pushing hard to hire some new truck drivers and get them trained before the snow comes a flying. So the county, by law, we have money set aside for road maintenance and for bridge maintenance, and that includes plowing. Those funds are there, and we look forward to seeing Road and Bridge perform well. And plowing snow, we're rooting for them. So the priority of those funds are fairly straightforward, and the board has been really good at supporting the Road and Bridge Fund and giving them the money they need to maintain our assets. Those other projects within Public Works, and especially as it relates to transportation, they come from a mill levy that's been administered for many years, and the board determines where that money is spent or how much is given to transportation projects. And they also transfer some general fund dollars over to handle those transportation projects and other capital improvement projects within the county. So we go through a process, and we are weighted by the county strategic plan, which is very good. And we compete, the transportation projects compete with the other projects in the county for dollars. And the board has been very good at supporting transportation related projects in the past, and I expect them to continue that in the future. Also, another thing that the county has been very successful at doing is leveraging the partnerships that we have. So I mentioned a few projects here. Aurora, they're going to be a partner. Centennial is going to be a partner on projects. Littleton is another partner, and we look at leveraging those relationships to help fund some of these projects. We also leverage our relationship and those opportunities we have with the federal grants. So DRCOG is the regional metropolitan organization that administers DRCOG's or the federal funds. So we look at applying for grants to help move some of these projects forward. Before I turn it back over to Luke, the county participates in 3 types of projects we look at. So we look at projects that are strictly in unincorporated Arapahoe County. So those are only going to be funded, or the responsibility to be funded by the county. Another type of project is a split jurisdiction project. So a few of those projects were that way, where we have the county sharing a project with Aurora. So that's another type of project. And then there's those regional projects. And I mentioned one, and that was I-25 in Bellevue. So we have those three type of projects from a funding perspective. And the board, in a meeting earlier this year, they committed to funding all three of those. And as we'd all like to say, we can fund everything, but we know that there are priorities, and some tough decisions have to be made. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Luke.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, it's really kind of eye-opening how complex all these things can get very quickly, even in more sparsely populated parts of the county. We have some folks lined up on the phone and online. So let me start with a phone question. This is Donna, who has a question about a couple different intersections. Donna, go ahead. You are live.
The one is where Bellevue ends at Jordan. It needs to be done all the way out to Parker Road. Freya Poundstone is the one who didn't allow that to happen, and that needs to happen because there needs to be more arterial between east and west.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Donna. And one of the challenges with that project is that we have the dam, Cherry Creek Reservoir, that blocks a lot of the ability to build a road in there.
It goes right around it.
Yeah. So let me look. I'm looking at it on a map, and I know that property is not the county's. And you're saying make a connection from Bellevue all the way down to Jordan.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Parker Road.
All the way to Parker Road. Yeah. So that, yeah. So I think that road would fall into the floodplain of the Cherry Creek Reservoir. There's been. I think you're hitting on a point here that's really important. As you travel from the eastern parts of the county around Arapahoe and Buckley, and you want to head towards I-25, there's some pinch points. And one of those pinch points is caused by the Cherry Creek Reservoir and also by the airport. So trying to find a way to get through those is very difficult. And there's basically a funneling effect, and we have Arapahoe Road is a really important corridor, Broncos Parkway, and you're hitting on something. It would be really nice to be able to extend Bellevue all the way over through the Cherry Creek Reservoir property and the Coors property. But unfortunately, I'll look at that in a little closer detail, but I know that's in the flood headwaters of the Cherry Creek Reservoir.
So to follow up on that, what does that mean exactly? Like you just can't build there, or it would be a lot more expensive to build, or like when something's in a floodplain, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, that's a great comment, Luke. Great question. So if we were able to build there, we were able to get the permits to build through there, then it's going to be a lot more expensive. I imagine the road would have to be elevated.
Right.
The environmental impacts is something that is very sensitive to Colorado's residents. We do not like to impact the natural environment. And there's a lot of regulations that we have to work through to mitigate and minimize the impacts from the environment. So that in itself would be very difficult to get through and would be costly to get through that process just to get environmental clearances. And I don't know if that could be done. And then to that second point, the improvements would be in such a way that they'd be more expensive to build.
Okay. All right. I'm going to bring on another caller. We seem to have a lot of questions that are sort of around the Quincy and Gun Club area, but let me. This is a Gun Club question. This is Greg on the phone. Go ahead, Greg. You're live.
Just wanted to know what the plan was for Gun Club at Hampton Avenue. The intersection needs big improvements.
Yes, Greg. I wonder if you should hire on with Public Works. You got it. And that as we did an improvement there at Gun Club in Quincy, that bottleneck, if you would, was eliminated, and that problem went to other parts of Gun Club. And you're right, Hamden is another challenge. So the CDOT, the Department of Transportation, takes over Gun Club at Quincy, and that becomes Highway 30 as you go north. So I would like it to happen sooner, but CDOT did apply for a safety improvement grant through themselves. So they're funding a project there at Hamden. Recently, I just heard, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that CDOT was running into some right-of-way issues, or they were going to have to procure right-of-way or get some right-of-way there. So it's going to delay that project a little bit. But what that project, it was priced way smaller scale than what you would like. But that project was going to add a right turn lane, which would alleviate some of the problem, but probably not as much as what is needed. That project or that stretch of road is a 2-lane road, and right now it's on CDOT's 10-year plan, but it's not funded. Instead, CDOT has prioritized funding on I-25 in different areas, and then also along I-70 in the I-70 Central project. So unfortunately, not a lot of big changes are going to happen there soon. There's going to be a little relief in a right turn lane as you're heading southbound at that road. So great comment, and I will make a note of that and continue to ask CDOT to continue to advocate for you and ask CDOT to improve the road.
That leads us to another Gun Club question. Richard is asking online, what is the progress of the design for Gun Club Road between 6th Avenue and Mississippi?
Oh, good question. So we just put out a RFP, which is a request for proposals along that stretch of road, and we have selected a consultant, and we're just waiting to confirm that we'll have budget for that in 2021 before we award that project. Sorry, in 2022, and we'll award that project and get that underway. And that's a preliminary design, and we're looking at how that road is going to look in the future. I know we have some safety money for the Alameda and Gun Club intersection. So we're looking at what that'll look like in the future. So I hope that answered your question.
Excellent. And by the way, when Jim says maybe you should come work for the county, he's not kidding. We are hiring not just snowplow drivers, but all kinds of positions. So go to arapahoegov.com if you or someone you know might be looking for public service work. I'm going to give you the answer to the second polling question, and then I'll ask the next one in a couple of minutes. We asked on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to recommend living in the county to someone else? 31% of you said you're very likely, 43% said you're somewhat likely, 17% said you were neutral, 10% said you were somewhat unlikely, and nobody said that they're very unlikely. Good news. For those of you who answered in the somewhat unlikely, we'd love to hear why, like what we can do, because assuring quality of life in the county is one of the boards and all of our top goals. So please let us know. You can send emails to communications services at arapahoegov.com, and we will be happy to answer those questions for you, or send you to the people who can, at least. Let me ask you the final polling question. Once again, if you want to ask a question of Commissioner Baker or Jim, dial *3 if you're on the phone, and that'll put you through to an operator. And if you're online, you can put a question in the comments box. We're getting a couple lined up already. Let me ask one more polling question. This one is about your interactions with Arapahoe County government. This is, how satisfied have you been with your interactions with the Arapahoe County government specifically? Answer 1, if you've been very satisfied. Answer 2, if you've been somewhat satisfied. 3 is neutral, or it's not applicable because you really haven't had many interactions with us. 4 is somewhat dissatisfied, and 5 is very dissatisfied. So once again, number 1 is you're very satisfied with your interactions with the Arapahoe County government. 2 is somewhat satisfied. 3 is neutral or not applicable. 4 is somewhat dissatisfied, and 5 is very dissatisfied. I'll give you those answers in a few minutes, but right now we will go back to the phones. We have John, who has a question about electric vehicles. John, go ahead. You are live.
Yes, thank you. My question is, you're going to have electronic, cars. You're going to have autonomous trucks up and down I-70 and along all of the arterials coming through before you know it. What's your thought on charging stations, and do you envision off-ramping to create charging stations?
John, thanks for the question, and I recognize your voice. It's good to hear from you, John. So you're right, John. I think the future is upon us, and one of the things that we want to make sure is that we're getting ready for, or yeah, we're embracing those technologies where it makes sense, and that we're getting ready for them. So from the autonomous vehicle standpoint, we want to make sure that we're adopting and maintaining our assets so that our assets and those that lane striping can be recognized um, when those come out. And then in regards to electronic vehicles, right now electronic vehicle stations are mostly are very densified within the county, so in a very small part of the county. So we would like to have a more formal conversation with the board on their thoughts on promoting and encouraging electronic vehicle charging stations, so that could be implemented in the planning process right at the beginning, where we'll ask or require developments to provide those type of services. I appreciate you bringing that up, and we need to be prepared, and we need to embrace those emerging technologies. So thanks for the question, John.
Hey, Luke, this is
Yeah.
Commissioner Baker.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I just wanted to say that I did hear today about a plan to install an electric vehicle charging station somewhere in Deer Trail. That's a project that's being looked at. It's going to be in cooperation with the I-70 REAP, the Regional Economic Assistance Partnership, and Deer Trail Schools. So it's at its very beginning. It's just a twinkling in someone's eye, and but it's that's how things get started. So I heard about that today.
Excellent. Yeah, and obviously we're going to see more electronic options as time goes on. So, and naturally charging will be a huge part of that. I think that's going to be part of really governmental efforts at all levels, from federal on down. So, follow up to that, Jim, is a question from Jackie online, who's asking, what are the alternative transportation options in the plan? I think you've outlined a number of them. I'm wondering, we talked about this at the first conversation with Commissioner Sharp. When you talk about alternative things like electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, what sort of pecking order is there? Like, when are we likely to see things before other things, and what things are more further in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I know for one. So telecommuting is here, and it was really really brought on, as we all know, by COVID, and the county and the county commissioners have embraced it, and they've allowed a hybrid type of schedule to be implemented where it makes sense in the county, and we all know that had a huge impact on the commutes, especially during 2020, and I would say even during 2021. The traffic levels probably aren't quite where they were. What we've seen is that there's been a little bit of change in pattern, where the peak seems to be moved, instead of in the morning and in the evening. It seems to be spread out through more of the day. So telecommuting is one solution, and I don't know technology, but technologies had to be used to implement it. I think electronic vehicles is another technology that it's gaining a lot of traction, and it's still fairly new. One of the downsides is, there's an infrastructure that is needed to support that electronic vehicle fleet and those charging. So we're still learning what those requirements are, and then I know with the county having the bike and ped options, that's always something big. And if we get our land uses in conjunction with where people work, I think that could really help the bike and ped type of solutions to really hit it off. on the I-70 corridor, there's a unique opportunity here where we have Port Colorado being developed, and we have numerous other businesses being built out near DIA and the Front Range Airport. And then we have, a lot of homes being built in that area. So if we have people living closer to where they work, I think that could really help with some of these other opportunities, if you would, and maybe not technology, but other modes of transportation to really hit it off, at least in certain areas of the city and of the metro area. So, Luke, I hope that answered your question. And maybe Commissioner Baker had something else to add.
No,
He's
I
good.
really don't. You did a great job at that, Jim.
Okay.
It actually
I
leads
know
to.
it.
Go ahead, Jim.
I
Sorry.
was just going to say it's very rural out in that part of the country, and I know horses are awesome to ride. So, um, yeah, it's very unique opportunities. Excuse me. All joking aside, along I-25, there's a huge number. Sorry, along I-70, there's a huge number of interchanges being looked at along the I-70 corridor. And in conversations with CDOT, they're very interested in managing the transportation demand on that corridor. So what that means is, can we provide transit along the corridor? Can we provide park and rides along the corridor, or other options for people, so that this corridor will behave in a way that doesn't really require 10 lanes in each direction, or 5 lanes in each direction, that we can minimize the number of lanes. And starting this early is pretty impressive from CDOT's look ahead. So we're in conversations with them on how to make that happen. I know one of the projects at I-70 and Harvest, they put forward $4 million to hopefully address some of these challenges. So that's a lot of money to go towards dealing with these very issues, this transportation demand management.
That raises another point too. That if you go to the PWD page on the ArapahoeGov.com, we're currently doing studies and taking surveys and things like that about the I-70 corridor. It's part of, I believe it's the Watkins Bennett area vision study. Is that right, Jim?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Yeah. So that would let you sort of see what's going on, what the growth projections are, offer your suggestions. And this actually, what your explanation sort of anticipates this other question that I have here in front of me from an online viewer who's asking she's saying there are some light rail stations, but getting from there to other places is often difficult. It sounds like kind of the last mile problem that internet service providers have in terms of getting people from their front door to the public transportation ride that they're looking for. You mentioned some of the things there, but it sounds like that might be something that as the county grows, there will be more of a call for that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that is correct, Luke. And that is a riddle that the industry is continuing to work at solving. And not every light rail station and not every situation is the same. So there might be some micromobility solutions that come in. There might be some other types of services that I think Greenwood Village is looking at a anonymous shuttle to make routes through the region to pick up passengers to bring them to the light rail station. So not every light rail station is the same, but to the point of the caller or the question is that there is a demand for that last connection that people need to make to get them on a light rail or to that next stop. So a lot more development and a lot more progress will be made in the industry.
And the shuttle you just mentioned, is that an example of micromobility?
Micromobility would be more of the scooters, where you're hopping on a scooter or on a bike and not going too far with that, and you're
Right.
paying a little money to ride one.
And another questioner is asking, is it cheaper to enhance or improve or expand public transportation than it is to widen roads. Is that, or build roads? Is that a apt comparison?
That's a great question. And I guess it depends. One of
Sure.
the things with whenever you throw transit in there or a public transit, um, you're putting money towards a solution that hopefully decreases the demand on the adjacent facility or those other facilities. And then, so I'm not going to answer your question directly. So in a way, it's that balanced approach where, I mean, if we make an improvement here, that there's benefits to not having to improve another road, but there's also some benefits that we it's hard to measure, whether it's either a environmental impact or whether it's providing opportunities for others that don't own a car, or maybe they want that option of traveling with a smaller environmental footprint. So I think there's a lot of benefits there. So I don't know if I can answer that directly to say, oh yeah, this one is this one is that.
I can
But
chime in a little bit
Yeah.
as well, Luke, if you don't mind. The I represent the county on the Denver Regional Council of Governments, which is where a lot of the federal money coming into the Metropolitan Planning Organization, that is Dr. Cog, is divvied out to the members of Dr. Cog, 54 some member governments that belong to Dr. Cog. And I have to say that, there's a change happening right now in how projects are prioritized. And you can read into that, there's a change in how projects will be funded in the future. Projects will be prioritized not so much by alleviating congestion, but will also be judged on how they may be able to affect greenhouse gases, or how they might be able to reduce greenhouse gases, I should have said, but also how they will reduce vehicle miles traveled. So, in some cases, in the view of some transportation planners and some government officials, decision makers, easing congestion may be something that is lowered in the priority, because that pain, the suffering of traveling in congestion, while we know that bumper to bumper traffic adds more pollution to our environment, um, it's also seen as a way to reduce vehicle miles traveled. That if enough people get sick and tired of waiting in traffic, they may then choose to go on rapid transit, to go on public transportation and leave their car at home. So there's some strategy by certain segments of decision makers to try and actually increase the pain of congestion as an overall good for society.
You have any thoughts on that?
Me?
Yeah.
I disagree. I'm not in that camp. I believe that safety comes with having smooth roads, less congestion. And we have to remember our roads are being traveled by our 16-year-old new drivers and by school bus drivers. So safety for me overrules any priority for congestion. I think safety rules out in that case. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Don't take this as a suggestion that we're going to make your lives miserable, because that's the opposite of what we want to do. Let me go to the phones for another question. This is Christina, who has a safety question about Parker and Quincy. Christina, you're live. Christina? I think we might have lost Christina, but her question is that she has safety concerns about Parker Road and Quincy. Is there anything, Jim, you can talk about there? I'm not that familiar with the intersection.
Yeah, it would have been a great question. So the Parker and Quincy intersection is a CDOT facility, and I'm not too familiar with the safety concerns there. So it'd be great if she could communicate those to us. But I know this, that they're looking at improving that intersection. It's a very busy intersection, so much that there's a triple left turn going to eastbound Quincy. So very heavily traveled, very important intersection, and it's been identified as needing improvements. And I think the city of Aurora with CDOT and the Arapahoe County is well into the preliminary design of that project, and I know it's moving through. I'm not sure whenever it's planned to go to construction, but be glad hear about your safety concerns and work with CDOT to get those addressed.
Definitely, yeah. A triple left turn seems like something that should be addressed.
It's
Let me
a
give you
big,
what's that, Commissioner?
I'm sorry, it's a big intersection. I also wanted to say the same, at the same time, Jim, wasn't there a study on Bellevue and Parker as well?
Yeah, Bellevue and Parker, that's right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Bellevue and Quincy and Parker. There was a study being done on both of those. I'm not sure where they are. Haven't communicated any plans written in stone for that yet.
Okay. Before we go to our last question, I'm going to give you your responses to the polling question. We asked, how satisfied have you been with your interactions with the Arapahoe County government? 31% of you have been very satisfied. 19% have been somewhat satisfied. 44% have been either neutral or it's not applicable. 6% have been somewhat dissatisfied, and nobody has been very dissatisfied. We always love to hear. But for the 6% who have been somewhat dissatisfied, we'd love to hear why. Also, if you want more details about the Quincy Parker Roads safety situation, you can email us at communicationsservices@arapahoegov.com. And you can send any questions you have to that email address, and we'll make sure the right people get to it. For our last question of the evening, we have an online viewer saying, has anything been considered to address the pinch points now versus later, meaning over the next 20 years? You mentioned signaling and signage. How soon may some of these things be addressed? Because current traffic is difficult in many times and places as it is.
Yeah, that's a good question, and what we're addressing or trying to address an issue there at I-70 and Air Park, where there's a future projection of congestion coming, especially as development happens. So, unfortunately, a lot of times the transportation industry is reactive, and we with these projects in the rears after a lot of pain's been experienced. So we work at designing and projecting forecast levels to meet demand, and we have 20 years on our project. So we look at forecasting them into the future, 20 years, to provide that level of service that's acceptable. Unfortunately, sometimes there might be a change in like a turning movement. So, for instance, Quincy and Parker, a triple left, that is a huge amount of traffic. So that didn't originally start as a triple left, I'm sure. I'm sure it was probably a double left. And then the need arose as development occurred farther to the east to add an additional lane. So those things, unfortunately, we wish we knew all of them up front. But we know that there's going to be little tweaks here and there that will release or will add some improvements that will help with those hot spots. So unfortunately, we can't capture them all, but we try to capture in that 20-year design horizon. And then as those challenges come up, we look at implementing those solutions. And of course, we'd like to start with the smaller, easier solutions up front, so that low-hanging fruit. And then we have to move to those more intense, adding physical lanes or adding infrastructure to those hotspots. So Arapahoe Road, CDOT has looked at trying to reduce some of those hotspots along Arapahoe Road. So some projects will be coming forward throughout the years for those projects to be addressed. And there's other projects that'll be coming out occasionally to address some of these hot spots throughout the county.
All right. Well, that brings us to the bottom of the hour. And I just want to thank Commissioner Baker and Jim Kotzer for all their insight and information, and thank all of you for joining us. We're going to be doing 2 more of these. They're district specific over the next couple of weeks. And like I mentioned, you can view a recording tomorrow by about this time tomorrow, which will be on our webpage at arapahoegov.com/town hall. Or our YouTube channel, and that's where you can see the slides and the Q&A. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email us at communicationsservices@arapahoegov.com. But thank you and have a great evening.